All right, welcome back to another top 10 video on this week of top 10 videos that we're doing. Now, I'll be real, going into this one, I don't remember everything on this list, like by detail, but I remember enough that I could talk about most of them. Not all of them, some of them have to be brief, very brief, but I could talk about most of them. This is the top 10 anime just ever. The top 10 I've watched, my personal opinion. I've watched a decent amount of anime, over 100 some shows. I think that's a good amount to, judge my taste and take my top 10, the ones that I enjoyed the most, and talk about them. Because, I really enjoy these shows, and I really think that I would highly recommend all of these, except maybe one for reasons that I'll get into. Maybe one or two. Let's start. Number 10. We have 91 Days. 91 Days is a show. It's essentially like an American mob show. Set in anime. It's a revenge story. And I really enjoyed it. I think the story point. This is one of the shows I have to talk about very briefly because I don't remember everything. It's been a while since I've seen it myself. But this is a show that I think hits all those story points really well. And its pacing is really good. The story is really good. I really dug all the characters, and especially the main character, his motive for doing everything, and the ending was also pretty good. I really, really enjoyed the show, and I really need to watch it again because it was so good, and I would highly recommend it to anybody. Next up, number 9, we have Hyoka. Now, Hyoka is okay. Let's get this out of the way first. I am one of those people that love action shows. I love action. I love, adventure, sci-fi, fantasy. But I also, this is a warning for one of the shows that's later on this list, I love slice of life and I love comedy, and honestly, put a good romance in front of me and I will probably love that as well. My favorite manga, I think, at the moment is like Love of War, and that's like a slice of life comedy romance blend, and it's my favorite manga. I really enjoyed it, but it's not my favorite. It doesn't make this list, unfortunately. But there's something later on this list that's like, okay, that makes sense based off of what I just said. But Hyoka is just a fun, enjoyable show, and specifically, like, I think the character that made this show better for me was Chitanda, the main heroine, and she honestly, like, the whole I'm curious thing and just going, and then them going like solving these mysteries, like Scooby-Doo type mysteries. Not like Scooby-Doo type mysteries, but they're like solving mysteries and figuring out things, and just like the way of how things work, and it's like just this entire plot line. This slice of life plot line. It is so good. It's so enjoyable to watch. It's just so relaxing and chilling, and I really enjoyed it thoroughly all the way through. I wish there's a season 2, but there's not, and it's unfortunate because I know the light novel. I think this light novel goes on for way longer. But if there's a season 2, I'd absolutely watch it because this is a show that I loved from beginning to end. Next up, number 8, we have Steins Gate. Now, how to describe Steins Gate? Steins Gate originally was a visual novel, and the best way to describe this is keep an open mind. And I mean open mind, I mean do not quit after the first couple of episodes. Because I will be real with you, as well as a lot of other people that have watched Steins Gate. The first 12 episodes of this show are the most boring and slow paced episodes of anime I have ever watched. It's the most boring, slow paced episodes of anime I've ever watched. And a lot of that has to do with plot setup and world building. And I'm okay with world building, but the thing about it is that it's moving ridiculously slow to the point where it's like I had to on my first watch of this show, I was like, this is trash. I hated it. And then I went back and rewatched it and paid more attention to the first 12 episodes. I was like, and then you get to the last 12 episodes where it's just really good because that payoff in those last 12 episodes is phenomenal in every single way like the way possible. Like that, like the episode 12 or episode 13, which is so good when it comes to payoff, because after building up all these characters, and this thing happens to a certain character that propels them on to their journey throughout the second half of the season. It is just so good. It's like I went back, like on my second rewatch, I was like, okay, that was one of the best shows I've ever watched. I was like, that was just genuinely better than I remembered because I wasn't really paying attention, or I was very bored while watching the first 12 episodes. But don't let those 12 episodes discourage you. This show is phenomenal. That payoff to the first 12 episodes, and the plot lines and plot points that are closed, everything is closed, and it is just so good. It's so good. Number 7, the newest show to join this list, and I almost didn't want to include it because it's so new, but I kind of felt like I had to because I love this show so much and I could not talk about it. I'm going to talk about it in another video in a bit, but I could not talk about it. This is Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the latest show by Studio Trigger. So, Edgerunners, right? Edgerunners is what got me to play Cyberpunk 2077. It's really good, really great game, But the show, I think, is even better than the game, because Edgerunners does this thing where it takes all these characters in the Cyberpunk world, gives them background and motive, and combine that with great animation and great villains, and you just have it's just an amazing show all around. Especially that second half of the show where after everything has gone horribly wrong, and there's a time skip, and that ending with that one character that I can't say because it's spoilers and it's fairly new, so you're gonna have to go watch it yourself, was so freaking good. Everything about the show was just so good. The music was great, the characters were great, the animation was great, the art was great. It's just so good on every single level. I highly recommend you go watch it, and then maybe go play Cyberpunk because I really enjoyed the game after that. Number 6, we're not even halfway through the list yet. Fate Zero. Now, I'll go on the record. I am a Fate fan. I am a pretty big Fate fan. I've seen at least most of the mainline stuff. I haven't delved into a lot of this. I've delved into some of the spinoffs, but I haven't delved into a lot of the spinoffs. And I decided to only include one Fate. When going through this, I was like, okay, I can only include one Fate because it just kind of take away from the others on this list. That was as I was ordering my top 15, just so I can get that top 10. I was like, only one Fate would make this list. It is Fate Zero. Fate Zero, I think, is really good in setting up what happens in Fate Stay Night and Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven's Feel. It's really good, especially Unlimited Blade Works, and it's really good at setting all of that up, as well as having a story on its own with characters that are for the most part completely separate from the future Fate visual novels or shows or whatever you want to get into it with. That it kind of just stands on its own as the best one, in my opinion. The animation is ufotable. They did Demon Slayer. It's animation is phenomenal. The Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven's Feel animation are leagues better. That's because they were made later. But I think this show just combines everything that I loved about Fate. I love about Fate, but it just makes it better and enhances it in every way possible. And I really loved it. All the characters are great. Some of my favorite Fate characters just ever come from this show. My favorite Fate character still comes from Limited Blade Works, the Unlimited Blade Works version of Rin. But overall, the show is just phenomenal. I would not recommend it. I highly recommend it, right? I couldn't recommend it enough. Now, is it the first Fate show you should watch? That's a debate in the Fate community, because Fate Zero spoils Unlimited Blade Works, and Unlimited Blade Works spoils Zero. It's weird, okay? It's weird, but I would recommend watching Zero first. It's what I watched first, and I think that overall, let me have a better experience when it came to Fate. We are finally at the top 5. I feel like this number 5 spot especially, you'd think it'd be higher, but it's not. I think it's for a variety of reasons. Number 5 is Attack on Titan. And I think the reason why Attack on Titan is at number 5 instead of when I made this list a few years ago, I put it at number 1 or something. The reason why Attack on Titan is number 5 is because enjoyability. If you haven't watched my other videos, it's I really prioritize enjoyability over anything. And I really, really enjoyed Attack on Titan. I just enjoyed the other things more on this list more. Attack on Titan, I think, has one of the best stories in anime, just in general. I have read the manga. I will be real. I have read the manga. I don't think that ending is amazing, and I think that's what kind of contributes to placing lower. I don't think the ending is amazing, but it's a fine ending. But I don't think it's like amazing. It's not anything mind blowing. But the journey to getting there was so unbelievably phenomenal that I don't think the ending could ruin it for a lot of people. I don't think it could, me personally, because the journey getting there was phenomenal. Now, controversially, was the studio change from Wit Studio to Mappa a good decision? I mean, I prefer Wit Studio's animation at times, but also at times I prefer Mappa's more realistic take an approach to Attack on Titan. Considering the arc that we are in with Attack on Titan, I feel like it needs to be way more realistic than it previously was. And yeah, we don't get to see those cool shots, those shots like Levi flying in between freaking buildings with the ODM gear anymore. Or rather, actually, no, that's not even true because they have they have some really good scenes. Mappa really went ham on animating when it came to final season part 2, for specific scenes. But like, I think just everything about Attack on Titan, like that final season when it came to Mappa, was either like really good or kind of meh. I'm specifically talking about the CGI here. I'm not as big a CGI stickler as a lot of people are. I don't mind it. I think it's fine. It doesn't like throw me off. Like I've seen more CGI. Let's be real. We've all seen more CGI in anime, 3D CG. But all that being said, I'd still highly recommend Attack on Titan to anybody because this is already on its way. It already is a modern classic at this point. It is. It is already a modern classic just based off of impact and story alone. I think this show has cemented itself among the greats. Number 4. And for this one, I actually had to be very, very specific. This is one of the shows I was talking about that was like, I would not recommend somewhat. It's weird. I have to be very, very specific for this one because of what happened to this show. Number 4 is Promised Neverland Season 1. Now, I say because of what happened to the show because Promised Neverland Season 1, I think from here on out, I think these shows are like 10 out of 10s. Promised Neverland Season 1 is a 10 out of 10. Promised Neverland Season 2, that is like a strong 2 out of 10 on every single level possible. And the reason why is because I think this show genuinely offends me every time I think about it. Because before Season 2, I read up to like maybe volume 15 or 16 in the manga. And I had like 4 volumes left, and I loved it. I really did. The whole thing with like Goldie Pond and their escape and finding Yugo and all that was just so good and so compelling to me, and then how they met up with, and this is spoilers at this point because of season 2 airing, how they met up with like a certain character that didn't die. It's weird. I can't get into it like too much, but that they didn't technically die was just all amazing in the manga. But the anime, the first 2 episodes were on point. The first 2 episodes were like, okay, this is how Promised Neverland was supposed to be animated. And then when you get to the point where they're in the bunker and they cut out, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Yugo was not in Promised Neverland Season 2. He wasn't. He wasn't. And that entire Goldie Pond arc just got cut. And they kind of just ended the show in Season 2. And it is the most offensive thing I've ever seen. Like I feel so offended every time I watch it because I love this show. The first time I watched the show, I was like, okay, this is my favorite show of all time. That was the first time I watched the show. It gave me chills. The plot line was great. The stories were great. The characters were great. Everything about the show was just a 10 out of 10 when I first watched it. Like, Season 1. Season 1 is a 10 out of 10 in every single scenario. It is so good. I loved it so much. And then Season 2 aired, and it just all went flying out the window. And that ending with the whole slideshow ending and blah, 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 just wasn't as impactful as it was in the manga. I'm still very, very upset that they cut out all of Goldie Pond, because Goldie Pond, in my opinion, is like the best arc in that entire thing. Goldie Pond was so good. It's such a good arc, and they cut all of it out. I'm very upset. But yeah, go watch Promised Neverland season 1. It's really really good. Season 2, not so much. Go read the manga. Top three. Number three, we have Code Geass. So the thing about Code Geass is season 1, especially season 1, is kind of has the same thing as Promised Neverland, but not the same extent. Code Geass season 1 is another 10 out of 10. The story, the characters, the twists and turns, like, everything about that show, without getting into spoilers, because even though the show is like 16 years old at this point, it's a show that I would highly recommend you just go watch yourself. Just everything about season 1 was just amazing. I just couldn't keep my eyes off of it. I just couldn't stop thinking about it if I wasn't watching it. It it's a show that got me by the throat. It started choking me. It just would not let go. It was so good. And then we get into season 2, and how I describe Code Geass season 2 is that season 2 is a complete dumpster fire of a show that manages to stick the ending so well that it is like quite possibly one of the greatest endings in all of anime. That's how I would describe season 2. Season 2 is just it's the same. It's the same thing with Promise, like not even the same thing with Promise Neverland, because Promise Neverland season 2 didn't even have a good ending. The same thing I feel like with Death Note, where after a certain thing happens in Death Note, like after like episode 25 or something, it's just not good. It isn't. It's not good. And then you get to that ending, you're like, well, this was phenomenal. This ending is so good. It's just unfortunate that the freaking season, the build up to that ending throughout the entirety of season 2 was so bad. Like it's just not good. I wasn't enjoying myself while watching it. And I was so upset because I was like, how did you make a show? How did you make a season of a show this bad and it ended so good that it's like quite possibly one of my favorite endings in all of anime? How they did that is beyond me. But like, even like beyond, like besides that, I would still highly recommend this show. I really really enjoyed it for the most part. But like putting all those things I said about it aside, it was really good, really fun. I'm not a big mecha person when it comes to my anime. I'm inherently not. I think one of the things that kind of ruined mecha for me was Starling and the Franxx. That show was just, once again, so good until it wasn't. Where like the second half of that show was just not good at all. But I still would highly recommend this show to anybody just getting into anime as well. Number 2, I have a hard time placing number 2 and number 1 because number 2 and number 1 I think are really good for both for different reasons. I think number 2 is, I think, objectively the better show. However, me personally, I enjoy number 1 way more, and so that's why I have number 1 at number 1, and that's why I have Clannad at number 2. I'm talking about Clannad. I'm also including Clannad After Story because Clannad After Story is just the better season. It's the better show. But the thing about Clannad season 1 is that Clannad, it's a slice of life. It is, and I can understand why people might say it's boring. I personally didn't say it was boring. I was very hooked, but I can understand why people would say it's boring. I can understand why people say most slice of life shows are boring. But the thing about Clannad, I think Clannad takes the season 1 to build up those characters and build up a relationship between those characters and your relationship with those characters. That when you get to season 2 and Clannad After Story, and you get to certain points of that show, it's just very heartbreaking. And there's only 2 things in this world that have made me, the 2 forms of media in this world that have made me cry. I've mentioned this in one of my previous videos. One of those things is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Specifically, the ending of Chapter 5 and the ending of the game made me cry. The other one is Clannad After Story because of things in the story that I just cannot get into because spoilers for that show. If you ever wanted to go watch it, things I just cannot get into just made me cry like a baby, and I feel like it taught me like the importance of and value of family as well. I think it's a fair assumption to say, I think it's such like a cliche, something that a lot of people say. It's a fair assumption to say that Clannad, yes, did change my life. However, that not to say that it is a bad show, because I think Clannad objectively is just one of the best anime I've ever watched. I think objectively it would probably be number one if I didn't be number one if I didn't enjoy number one so much. Speaking of number one, let's talk about it. Number one, I don't think I've ever talked about on the channel before, and I don't think I've ever like brought it up in another video. I for sure have talked about it in my on my second channel. And if you've seen that, you know. Number one is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I, to the dismay of one of my friends, am a massive JoJo fan. And I've gotten to the point where I've convinced some of my other friends to be JoJo fans. And it's, here's the thing about JoJo, right? JoJo is so weird and dumb and haha bizarre, haha funny title name, that it's just amazing, and it can take all of that and also build in like a compelling story. Like, yeah, part one I can understand if people might not like part one and part two. I really enjoyed part one. I enjoyed part one a lot, especially even on my first watch of JoJo. I enjoyed part one a lot. Part two, on my first and second watch and third watch of JoJo, I have not really enjoyed part two at all. I think part two has some really high highs, but in my opinion, it has some really low lows that kind of don't make it as enjoyable as part one for me. I think Joseph is is like the perfect protagonist. However, there are some things story wise that I'm just like, I'm not too sure about that when it comes to the show. And then you get to part three, where part three, I feel like the first half of part three is boring at times, and then the second half of part three is absolutely amazing. And all the characters of part three, all the Stardust Crusaders, was just phenomenal. Part four is definitely one of the a divisive part because of the type of genre that Araki took it in, and it kind of transferred over to this like slice of life action mystery kind of thing. And on my first watch, same thing with Steins Gate, I didn't really enjoy it. But then I watched it for a second time, and I was like, this is phenomenal. This is amazing, and I really, really enjoyed every part of it. All the characters were great, the stand powers were great, and just like even the funny moments were even funnier. The bizarre, weird moments were even more bizarre and weird than in the previous parts. Especially like the invisible baby and all that. It's like it's so good. And then of course you get to part five, which is the most infamous JoJo part. Not for any bad reason. It's because objectively, out of all the anime parts when it comes to JoJo, it is the best one. It is the one that I don't know how they did it, where the anime is just so much better than the manga. Part five just manages to capture everything great about JoJo, take everything great about JoJo in the past, specifically part three. I feel like part five is like more of like a part three type, like more comparable to part three than anything else, and it just takes that and elevates it to a completely, entirely new level, and it's just so good. I love part five, and especially that ending, and like just all of part five was just so good, and it's like that is like 10 out of 10 JoJo. I think part five is what really propelled JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to the top of the list, and then part six is I'm currently rewatching JoJo. Again, I haven't finished all of part six. I've watched the first 12 episodes. I was like, I'm gonna wait till this is all done because Netflix's release schedule is ridiculously garbage and horrible, and I don't even want to talk about it. Their release schedule for part six was so bad that it killed the hype. It was so bad that it killed the hype. But from what I've watched of part six, the first 12 episodes, I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it as much as like part five and part four, but I did enjoy it. And yeah, that is my top 10 anime. I don't have any honorable mentions. I just couldn't be bothered to come up with some. But those are my top 10 anime. This list is subject to change eventually, but once again, this is just my opinion and what I think, what I enjoyed the most. Once again, I prioritize my enjoyability over anything else, because if I'm not enjoying it, then even if it has a good story, I'm not gonna watch it or play it. Like, I think a good example for that for me, I was I think Chrono Trigger has like a really really good story, but me personally, I wasn't enjoying it as much as a lot of other people did, and that's why I stopped playing it because I wasn't having a lot of fun with it. But I can understand why people say that's their favorite. It's the same thing with anime. If I'm not enjoying it, there's no chance that I'll end up continuing it and enjoy myself. Because if I'm not enjoying it, I'm just going to drop it, and that's what's going to happen. But yeah, this is just my opinion. Uh, make your own opinions when it comes to these top 10 lists. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.